Hi, I'm Mark Vernarelli, and welcome to Inside Harford County, a program where we sit down with our community leaders and discuss the issues important to the citizens of Harford County. Drug addiction, a very serious issue that impacts everybody, individuals, communities, families, businesses all across the country. Today we're having a very serious discussion about addiction in Harford County, the resources available to support families and others, and all the upcoming community events, especially one very big event we're going to tell you about focused on this critical issue. Joining us today is County Executive Bob Cassilly, Marcus Webster, the Administrator for the Harford County Office of Drug Control Policy, and Don Mathis, who is a certified peer recovery specialist and community health worker. Gentlemen, thank you all for being here today. Looking forward to talking to all of you. Mr. County Executive, I know this issue is very close to your heart. Why is this so important to you?
Yeah, well, before I just want to tell you, I'm so happy to be able to bring you both Marcus and Don. These gentlemen have extensive experience with addiction treatment in our Harford County community, so they're great folks. Look, this is important because this addiction affects every zip code. It's not isolated to any part of Harford County. And an addict affects their entire family, they affect their entire community. But help is possible, and recovery is possible, and help's available. So we want to make sure that folks know that. We want that message out there that you can get help and recovery is possible.
And Marcus, the fact that we even have your office, the Office of Drug Control Policy, shows how seriously we take that issue. We can't ever know for sure how many people are addicted or who have substance abuse disorders. We can know overdose statistics. How are they looking right now for the county?
Absolutely. So in 2024, we lost just over 20 individuals, 24 to be exact, to overdose. So far this year, we've only lost one. And I want to give credit to the amazing community partners that we have here in Harford County that are working on both the prevention front and those in active addiction to provide those hope and to get those numbers down. That's
great. Encouraging so far, at least. Absolutely. Early in the year, but still encouraging. Don, I understand that you have quite a story to tell. You are in long-term recovery. Thank God you have made it through the darkness, if we can call it that. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks for having me. I grew up in a family where I never saw a beer, never saw a drug. My parents were squeaky clean, and when I got to college, it was like let loose free, and I quickly got into a lot of alcohol, a lot of meth and speed, a lot of other kinds of drugs, a lot of marijuana, and I did that for a while, the whole time thinking, I can't do this forever, I can't do this forever. And what happens, Mark, is drugs are fun until they're not. And I started descending, and methamphetamine, meth, speed is especially debilitating. I was living with a woman and a couple of kids who I really loved and adored, and she just got fed up with me and threw me out. And her last parting gift was, here's the therapist, if you want to get well, go. And I did. Saw a psychiatrist, started going to outpatient treatment for twice a week for a number of years, went to AA meetings twice a night, twice a week, had a home group meeting, and I quickly was able to phase out from that lifestyle, which I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, because there may be a fantasy, well, people just love to get high, but that high love goes away very quickly, and you're still in the midst of this abyss which just eats and destroys you. So 41 years in November 11th, clean and sober. I thank all the who have helped me, and as like the county executive said, recovery is possible, and I'm one of them.
And you've really been on both sides of this. You've been in recovery. You now work for people to help them become recovered. How do you think we do overall in Harford County in terms of this very difficult issue?
Well, again, let me echo what Mr. Cassilly said. It affects everybody, every zip code, every educational level, every religious background, and what have you. Referring to a story, I used to work for a guy named Joe Ryan, who ran the drug control policy before Marcus's time. And he was faced with a neighborhood meeting where they said, we can't have these programs here because they'll attract all the people from Baltimore or Delaware or what have you. And Joe, who was a retired state policeman and a pretty smart guy, went to the sheriff's office, got the arrest records of everybody, took it back to the next community meeting and said, these are your neighbors. These aren't people from Baltimore and Delaware. These are people right here in Harford County that need these services. So we do a lot of good in Harford County. We have good nonprofit agencies, several I don't want to mention and leave anybody out, The hospital is tuned on. We have the Klein Family Center. And I used to work at Ashley Addiction Treatment. I want to plug Ashley because they're one of the premier residential programs in the country. So there's a lot of good going on. Recovery homes, detox centers, treatment programs. But the need is great.
And Marcus, you see the need every day in your office. You get calls all the time, I'm sure. It just must stay constantly busy.
Yeah, absolutely. It does keep us busy, but we always want to be responsive to what the community needs from us on all fronts. For instance, whether it's narcotics abuse or overabuse of cannabis, or even in the schools when it comes to the high rates of nicotine usage among our middle and high schoolers, we want to be constantly responsive to community needs and come together and identify solutions.
Don, we don't hear the word addiction used as much anymore, and there's a real reason for that, right?
Yeah.
It has something to do with the brain chemistry, is that right?
Yeah, but the term addiction more formally has been replaced in medical journals and in diagnostic statistical manuals as substance use disorder. Because this is one of those situations, Mark, where the more we know, the better we do. And we found out that addiction is really a change in the brain structure in which the cravings become almost irresistible no matter how harmful they are. So we have the term substance use disorder, which is a former medical term to describe that. And then there's also substance misuse for people that aren't totally addicted but have less of a problem but are still caught up in that nightmare.
So many people caught up in the nightmare who might not be considered addicts, as we used to use the word, and the stigma also has something to do with that word addiction too, right?
Yeah, stigma is really the major problem that we have to overcome. And again, the more we know, the better we do. People are starting to understand that one, again, is the county executive said, recovery is possible. So, I mean, I've worked with people as a peer recovery specialist. When they first come in the door, I go, my God, we're never going to help this person, or we're never going to help this. Lo and behold, 3-4 months later, they've gone to treatment, they've come back, and they're looking for us for aftercare. They're clean, they're sober, they're reuniting with their families, they're finding jobs and what have you. So I'm not saying it's an easy path, but it's a doable path. And the stigma, if we can get rid of that, that'll enable more people to look at it as a health condition rather than a moral failing.
Mr. Cassilly, I know you've been a big proponent of drug courts, and not every jurisdiction, shockingly, in this day and age has them, but we have one, and talk about that and why you think that's important.
Yeah, so what the drug court does is it takes someone who's in the criminal system because of an addiction, and it says, look, rather than just lock you up, we'll use the threat of criminal sanctions to encourage you into treatment. And so the folks are put in a different program, and Judge Kevin Mahoney runs that for Harford County on the circuit court. And these folks are basically sentenced, if you will, to treatment, and they have to there's a whole host of things they have to do and participate. And if they do that, if they're successful, then we avoid, rather than just putting people in jail who are in addiction, who, if you do that and they come back out still addicted, we've not really solved anything. But if we can eliminate the addiction, or whatever the word Don says I'm supposed to use, if we can eliminate that and use just that incentive of, we're giving you a choice, go into jail or get the treatment, and it's been fairly effective. And I just want to throw one thing out there as we talk about, Marcus talked earlier about survival rates and the like. We got to give credit to our emergency responders,
Amen.
Our ambulance folks. The Narcan has been a game changer. Unfortunately, for some folks, it just says, well, I can just stay addicted because I'll have Narcan available. But our emergency responders do an amazing job in getting out and being there early. Our 17 full-time paramedic units throughout the county are there. They provide the Narcan and save a lot of lives that way. And it's a tough job for them, because if people hit with Narcan, it's not uncommon. They once they come out of their once they regain consciousness, they can be fairly violent. And so not a lot of our emergency responders are big people, so it can be we've had some folks injured pretty severely in this, but they do a great job.
And Don, you can chime in about the drug court too, because you've had a lot of interaction
Yeah, I
with
was
that.
the case manager for a number of years with the 4 drug courts we have in Harford County, and the big difference is we have good judges. Drug courts got a bad rap in a lot of places because the judges were more retributive than they were therapeutic. But we have judges here that understand that. We also have a health department and a team of support services that once the decision has been made, and drug court doesn't mean, oh, you don't have to go to jail. You can come and if you leave a urine sample every couple of weeks. No, it's a lot of rigor. You have to do counseling, have to do your drug test, have to meet your probation officer, have to follow up with the orders of the court. And they're very, very successful. And the number of people that I encountered and met and families that survived drug court said it changed and saved their lives.
Marcus, what other programs and services does your office offer? You must be busy all the time. There are certainly a lot of initiatives that the county does that most citizens may not be aware of.
Absolutely. So we do a lot of in-school presentations, educational workshops, and activities. We are very active in the community, present at resource festivals, community events, just to be out there and to start having the conversation about, not only our experience, but what we're seeing or what the community may be seeing. We're also privileged to be overseeing the Opioid Restitution Fund, in which we're supporting holistically these pathways of recovery and the amazing partners who are doing great work in the community, whether it's through prevention education or centralized treatment. So we're really grateful for this opportunity to support the great work that's happening.
And Don, one thing that you've done that has really risen tremendously in a lot of different areas, you've become a certified peer recovery specialist. And it's that phrase called lived experience. If you've lived it, you can help others. Talk about what a certified peer recovery specialist is and what you do. It's
a pretty rigorous process, Mark. You don't just show up and say, hey, I'm sober now, let me come talk to people. I had to do 500 hours of volunteer in-place work training doing that. I had to take something like 40 hours of continuing ed unit, and I had to pass tests and exams to do that, so it's a good process. I'm going to just buttress one point that Marcus made on the Opioid Restitution Fund. Those funds, it's important to know that's not taxpayer money. Correct. That's the money from the pharmaceutical companies that was settled in a lawsuit. It's being put to good use by the county, and that's important to know. But the peer specialist, it's a growing movement. I know they're used in the hospital, they're used at Voice of Hope, they're used in other nonprofits in the county, they're used at Ashley. And you're right, lived experience. I was a former meth addict. The first time a meth addict came into the place where I was working, he's freaking out and what have you. Most of the other people there were 32-year-old former heroin addicts, but I could talk, hey man, I know this is what you feeling this? Okay, hey, I used, let's go talk. And that makes a difference.
Immediately puts people at ease.
It does. It does.
There's something called the Susquehanna Workforce Network, which is a recovery-friendly workplace, or fosters friendly workplaces for people in recovery. How does that work?
Well, disclosure, I'm on the board of the Susquehanna Workforce Network, and we have money from the feds and from the state, and what recovery-friendly workplaces are, and it's interesting. The unemployment rate in Harford County is like 2.4%. It's unbelievably low. But yet, and I've been on that board for 30 years, you'll hear employers saying, I can't find workers. I can't find somebody that'll follow directions. I can't somebody that's experienced to show up and what have you. A lot of people in recovery, after they put their bad days behind them, can get treatment and start rebuilding their lives, and they make great employees. We have a recovery-friendly workplace manager here in Harford County, James Maines, who is excellent. And he talks to employers, he does training with people in recovery about how to write a resume, get a job, and we also do Narcan training. As a county executive, Narcan, for people unfamiliar, is a medicine that reverses an opioid addiction. Somebody's getting ready to die, they're passed out, you squirt it up their nose, and a minute later they come through. Recovery-friendly workplaces have been training employers throughout the county to use Narcan.
Yeah, it's been a lifesaver.
Officers have it as well. I left them out as well.
I was going to say they carry it with their.
Yeah, they carry it as well. So they're frequently the first responder because there's more of them out and about the community all the time. So oftentimes that responsibility falls upon a police officer as well.
Right. Marcus, how about the mental health connection? I always go back to COVID. COVID changed everything.
Absolutely.
It brought a lot of people out who had perhaps mental health issues. It made a lot of people realize they had mental health issues. They kind of tie in, don't they? Substance use disorder sometimes and mental health conditions, right?
Absolutely. So Mark, substance use disorder is very much a mental health condition. And the way that we see them going hand in hand is this wonderful saying where addiction is best defined as being the opposite of connection. And recovery is that process of getting reconnected to oneself and the larger community. So we understand that when we're connected as these social beings, whether it's our recovery networks or community providers, that we're going to live healthy, happy lives.
Don, we've got a generation of what we call screenagers. They're on the screens all the time, and social media is huge in their lives. Talking about young people here, do you worry for them more than in years past? Do you see more of a problem with substance use disorders in the age of social media?
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary. There's so much available on the internet. Counterfeit pills. I mean, every week I read a story somewhere. 14 or 15-year-old, usually males, orders a pill from someplace in China. They think it's a Xanax or some kind of antidepressant or energy booster. They take it. It's got fentanyl. They die. And there's no control of that. The pills that are being sold on the internet look exactly like the pharmaceuticals they allegedly are, but they're not. They're mixed with fentanyl and xylazine, another dangerous drug. People buy them. They get swapped at parties. We'll talk about marijuana in a bit, I believe, Mark, but that whole notion that's so easy among young people whose brains aren't fully formed say, yeah, I can take a risk, or yeah, that killed somebody, but that won't happen to me. There's a lot of danger that they face, and parents and the rest of us need to be more aware of that.
Absolutely. We'll talk about marijuana with you in a minute. Marcus, your take on marijuana. THC is one of those ingredients that really has an impact on particularly the younger brain, if I can call it that. It's not harmless, right?
Correct. We agree with you. In my prior roles working with adolescents who often use cannabis, we want to talk about those harmful side effects, particularly for the developing brain, whether it's the erasure of gray matter or potentially stunting themselves emotionally. And when we talk about our outreach and engagement, we want to continue to not just educate our young people about those harmful effects, but as well as parents and community educators as well.
Don, I know you have some specific thoughts on marijuana as well.
Yeah. 2 hours ago, I was in a workshop with some clinicians online, and the trends are scary, Mark. There's a greater perception that marijuana is not harmful among young people. You see the packaging that these ingredients are for vaping and gummy chewies and what have you, which have no understanding of what the potency is. We have cases where kids, hey, I ate a marijuana gummy, I didn't get high, I'll eat 5 of them, and then bam, they crash. And there's all kinds of studies about psychological disorders and psychiatric disorders. Quick story, Mark. I testified before the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine about 3 months ago. And the panel that was before me were parents, one from Colorado, one from California, son, daughter, both great students in high school, played sports, great students, what have you, started smoking pot when they were 11, 12 years old. Fast forward, they both commit suicide. So it really does alter the brain, and it's dangerous. And we need to help young people understand what the consequences are.
And what's new out there now? What is new? You mentioned a little bit earlier, there are a lot of new things. It's just to keep up with the new stuff, you have to be constantly on the lookout.
Well, in terms of the marijuana stuff, what's new and even scary is the way they package it. Yeah. I mean, they have these flavored this is cherry flavored, and this is lemonade, and this is what have you. It's got pretty colors, and it's got some Smurfs on it. So what can this be? It's going to be like eating a Skittle. Well, it's not. It'll kill you. And there are other kinds of drugs that are emerging which are much more dangerous. I won't get into the technical names because it's just more confusing, but it's insidious, Mark. It's insidious. It's destroying kids, and I know Marcus and his team works with the schools, and other groups work with the schools, but we really need to redouble the effort for youth programming.
Absolutely. Just going to ask you, Marcus, about that key education component. What do you do to reach out to and try to make sure that the schools and others are utilizing what they have and what they can?
Absolutely. So the first thing we want to do is meet the individual or the organization where they're at. So we really want to understand, what are you seeing? What is the need? Are adolescents vaping in a particular hallway or bathroom? And to respond to that need. And when we really tailor that approach, we're seeing some amazing outcomes when it comes to not just transforming that, wherever the environment may be, but one new thing that we're trying out with a pilot program we're working with at a local middle school is getting the kids involved and establishing peer educators.
Absolutely.
Because we know that kids often struggle to listen to adults, is particularly the feeling of judgment. So when we can empower our kids to be the ones that are educating their peers, I believe we're going to see some more transformational outcomes as well.
Agree.
We have a very important upcoming event that is sponsored by the Harford TV Foundation, and it's called Facing Addiction in Harford County. It's a family affair, and that's coming up on the 10th of the month of April, 6:30 in the evening at the Opera House in Haverty Grace. This is a very important event. Don, why don't you start by telling us your thoughts on why everybody should show up and listen to these folks.
Well, as the title suggests, Mark, substance use disorder addiction is a family affair. There could be a tendency to say, well, this person is a drug user, an addict, or what have you. What we need to do is take care of just person only. What we know is that it affects the entire family in terms of, one, disintegrating their lives, devastating, or what have you. So what we're putting together is a panel of experts, including Magistrate Ted Hart from the Family Recovery Court. We have a case study of a young man who went through that process and is reunited with his family. We have other experts and therapists, and we have Dan McGee, who's written a book called Chasing the Sun, a well-known local businessman who had a tremendous life of recovery. It'll be at the Opera House. It'll show again on Harford TV. But what it is fact-based, real-life stories that the audience can listen to and say, yeah, this is what I know to do, or this is what I experienced, and understand, again, as the county executive has said, recovery is possible, because when families are in the midst of that hell, and it just devastates families, it's easy to overlook that there could be a positive ending. And what we want to do through that show and through that event is show there can be a positive ending, no matter how dire the circumstances are.
Ms. Cassilly, another example of Harford County being very forward and getting out there and trying to get ahead of a very serious problem.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the team we've got. These folks work very hard at what they do. Marcus' team is out in the community every day. They're hands-on, and Harford County is being very well served. And I'm really proud of what they're able to bring to the community, as well as Don and everybody he's working with too.
Marcus, let's go back to square one. Somebody picks up the phone, they're desperate, a parent discovers a child is using a substance or something. They call your office. What's the first step that your folks do to try to help them or direct them to help?
Absolutely. So the first thing we want to do is provide support and reassurance to that loved one or that parent, because we understand that's a difficult challenge to overcome, and there's a lot of fears and thoughts that maybe come across the parent's mind. What we want to really encourage families to do is have that conversation early. The earlier the better. Let's start building these prevention strategies amongst our youth early, but if and when the event arises, the Office of Drug Control Policy is there to meet that individual where they're at, provide them with supports, reassurance, or resources to help address that need as best as possible.
And how busy are you? I would imagine you get a lot of calls and you don't have much free time, I'm sure.
Absolutely. We do stay busy, but that's okay. I'm generally, I've been called to service, so I'm honored not just to serve Harford County, but to address this issue that affects all of us.
Now, Don, I understand you have 3 particular strategies, if we can call them that you adhere to, that you want people to know about. What are those 3 strategies?
First, like what we're doing now, recovery can happen and the problem can be reduced and reversed if the community takes an interest as a whole community. We have local elected officials, we have agencies, we have faith-based leaders, we have Harford TV, we have other groups, and it takes everybody working together to believe we can solve this problem. The second thing is we know what works. One reason the number of overdoses have gone down, as the county executive said, is the use of Narcan to reverse overdoses. The other reason it's gone down is we've developed over the last several years medications that can help people detox, where before they went cold turkey and they lived or they didn't live. And the third thing that's really important is keep hope alive. We're going to talk about this at the event on April 10th, but it's difficult when the walls are coming down and you say, what happened to my child or what happened to my mother through their addiction, to think it's going to happen. But there is hope. We have solutions. We know what works. The community is coming together. We're doing the best we can. And a lot of people are getting smarter, which means communities are getting healthier and safer.
Absolutely.
And Marcus, Don said this a little bit earlier, but it's important to say it again, that there's no way to say, I'm this ethnic background, I'm this age, I'm this gender, so this will or won't happen to me. You get calls from people from all backgrounds, rich, poor, in between.
Absolutely. Substance
abuse disorder has no boundaries.
It doesn't matter what your race is, gender, affiliation, or religious practices. Addiction can and will affect everybody, but as Don mentioned and the county executive, it's important to know that recovery can and will happen as long as there's hope.
Mr. Cassilly, we're not an urban county as in total, but we certainly have our share of issues as well, and it's important not to take this substance abuse disorder issue lightly, correct?
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it's, again, because it affects everyone. I mean, look, these folks can tell you, they're treating folks way out in the country, the people that live on 50-acre, 100-acre farms, so this is not just because it's not restricted to people who live in small condominiums or apartments, townhouses, whatever. That's one of those cross-cutting things, yeah.
Talk again a little bit briefly about the event that's coming up, which I think is so important up in Harford Grace on the 10th of April. Marcus, what do you encourage people to come out for, even maybe those who aren't involved in an addiction or substance disorder battle?
I think, come out to understand what addiction and recovery look like in Harford County. Don, as always, has amassed an amazing group of experts to be able to lead that conversation. Whether you're in recovery, experiencing addiction, or just curious, or just a citizen, come on out and understand what addiction and recovery look like here in Harford County.
And what recovery looks like, ladies and gentlemen, is Don Mathis.
Absolutely.
You are thankful, I'm sure.
I'm clean and sober is what I am.
41 years.
Absolutely.
And you talked about the walls crashing down. Yours had crashed down.
Oh, yeah.
And here you sit now helping untold numbers of people get their lives together. You feel blessed?
Extremely blessed, thank you. Well put.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing to think that you can recover. It's sometimes, I'm sure, it seems like an impossible thing.
Marcus, but there are
Marcus,
thousands of us, Mark. There are thousands of us in recovery in Harford County. And each of us try to share that message and that hope with other people.
And Marcus, when you get calls in your office, probably the first thing you tell people is, we can help you.
Absolutely.
We can direct you to help. And how many people who call you are desperate? Probably quite a few.
Oh, several. I've lost count of how many calls I've gotten from concerned parents, and it is concerning. But as Don has talked about, well, that power of that lived experience, and I'm grateful to be an administrator with lived experience with this issue personally and amongst my family. So we're confident we can provide that support, that reassurance that they are not alone. This crisis is not unique to them, and there is support and hope available.
Mr. Cassilly, you're a family man, a lot of kids and grandkids. Constantly, this issue, I'm sure, is on your mind for your own sake of your own grandchildren.
Sure, it's every parent and grandparent's nightmare, because you just don't know, right? You don't know what people are being tempted with. You don't know what people's vulnerabilities are, and you try, but we've seen those people that you thought were awesome parents, grandparents, and they end up with a child with a terrible addiction or worse, and it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Don, thank God for your recovery, and thank you all for being here today for this very important discussion. Don't forget, Facing Addiction in Harford County. It's a family affair coming up 6:30 in the evening on the 10th of April at the Opera House in Harford Grace, and there's the website on your screen where you can get more information. Thank you, gentlemen, all for being here, and thank you for watching Inside Harford County, airing exclusively on Harford TV. Join us again next month. I'm Mark Vernarelli.